Okay, so let's continue with queen d8, because queen b7, knight takes e7 wasn't so good for him. So queen d8, knight takes f6, and g takes f6. If bishop takes f6, also queen takes d7. We can say that g takes f6 weakened the king position, but in the current situation this is not true, because with g takes f6, black is already preparing for the endgame. So we won't have any kind of attack here. We will take his bishop back, of course, and then we are already in an endgame. And in that endgame, compared to the bishop f6, the bishop would be much more passive here than on e7, so much worse for him. So g takes f6, queen takes d7, queen takes d7, rook takes d7, and rook f8. Let's see how about this position. Also, his bishop seems to be a little bit passive. Of course, this is the only which he can do to find some counterplay, because rook f8, then I have several options. If I want, I can do kind of penetration on c7, but I can come with king f1 also towards the center, and there are no back rank checkmate threats at all. So rook fc8 is the most promising continuation for him. Rook cc7. We don't want to give up the c file at all. King f8. We also come with king f1. Rook b8. And okay, after b4, I think the position should be approximately equal, but only white has chances because of the queen size majority. So 2 pawns against 1. Sometimes even the a6 can be also weak, and slowly we go forward on the light squares, and our rook is already penetrated to the 7th rank. So obviously white has only chance to play for win. Okay, so this was the b takes a6. Let's see how about bishop c6 instead. Yeah, he just ignored the bishop takes a6, but okay, now we win a pawn, so come back with bishop d3. Rook fd8, h3 simply, useful move, open up the back rank, bishop c5, good move to activate the bishops, and after queen c2, I think we have a similar story. Okay, he has bishop pair, but the position is closed a bit, especially because of these pawns, and we even block them. So probably soon we will come with b4, maybe even b5 also, and a4. So also white's chances, I think, a little bit better than than for black. Okay, so let's go back a little bit. This was the knight e5. How about if he doesn't play this and just keeping the tension with rook f8? On the other hand, this sacrifices back the pawn. So of course now I take on d6, bishop takes, queen takes, and we can feel that here we already can't have any special problem. Queen takes d6, rook takes d6, and bishop e8. Yeah, because if he would come with the king with king f8, then we can try to create some active move like e5, knight g4, and rook e1. Yeah, we had to protect the e5. However, with that we gain some space. Moreover, a little bit we fix the pawn to dark square, which is an important principle. If we have light square bishop, block the pawns, fix the pawns on light or dark square, because the opponent bishop can't attack our pawn. So bishop e8, rook takes d8. I don't want to allow the rook takes d6, e takes d6. That is not so good. So rook takes d8, rook takes d8, h3, And knight h6 just come back here. And after knight e4, white position is also a little bit better, so minimum slightly better, but we are going forward on the dark squares. So for example, knight c5, knight d6, these are both very unpleasant. Moreover, he can't stop with b6, the c5 square, because the a6 is hanging also. Or even if he plays kind of knight f5, then we jump to c5, and we can feel that white is very good and very active. a6, b7 pawns are pretty attackable. Okay, alright, so let's go back. This was the king f8. How about bishop e8? Then we play rook c d1. Rook takes d6, rook takes d6, and king f8. Very normal plan, a little bit similar like the previous. Now the difference is that I can't play e5, because if he attacks with knight g4, I can't protect the pawn. And we don't have another rook with which can protect. So here just go back with rook d2. And okay, also the position is approximately equal, but we have a little space advantage thanks for the e4 pawn. It's not clear when can he play e5, because then weaken the d5 square again. So maybe he comes with king e7, and we just play a normal endgame, maybe h3, king f1 can also come. Okay, let's say equal, but of course if black plays the precise plan, then we won't have so big advantage like in the previous weaker lines. Okay, let's go back a little bit and let's see how about rook c8 instead of this knight f6. So rook c8, bishop f4 also, e5. That is the point why he's waiting with knight f6, because in the previous variation, if the knight was on f6, after bishop f4, e5, we had bishop g5, and the bishop is also more fighting for the d5 square, because sometimes we can take it, but already with the pin we also have like that. In the rook c8, in case of the rook c8, we don't have bishop g5 now, but no problem, just come here, knight f6, and okay, bishop g5 would be losing a tempo, so that's not really possible. But instead of that, if I play kind of rook a c1, that is also good. Castle, knight d5, knight takes d5, bishop takes d5. Yeah, we immediately jump to that square, and queen c7. Yes, okay, a little bit go into the c file, but his situation is not so easy. Because how can he continue the normal play? Space advantage we have, and with that white pawn he doesn't really have so much thing. Queen c7, for example, let's say that, and b4. And after b4 we can say that we have good compensation. Okay, very good. Let's go back and let's see how about the... Okay, knight f6, e5 we discussed. How about if he comes with b5? Bishop b3, just come back with the bishop. And bishop d7. Yes, also let's see if he comes with rook a7 and he would like to transfer the rook to d7 and a little bit block the pin. bishop e3. Yeah, we attack that, and rook d7. And let's see how to continue now. And let's see what would be the move here. Knight a4, double exclamation mark. What a beautiful move. What is the point of that? First of all, we are settling with knight b6 and bishop b6 also, with both. But the question is, of course, how about if he takes that? Bishop takes a4, bishop b7, and rook a c1. Knight b8, because he's attacked there. He has a clear knight up, but what can he do? He can't play rook c7 because bishop b6 I have. So what else can he do? Because if queen e8 to protect the knight, then I can continue the pressure with knight d4. So it's also not really good for him. Knight takes d4. Bishop takes d4, I don't need to hurry to take back the d7, maybe kind of knight f6. Bishop takes f6. Okay, g takes or bishop takes doesn't matter. Yeah, it's matter because now rook takes d6 I have, but if g takes is also hopeless for him, because I can come with rook c7 and win the material. So, queen a8 also doesn't help. Let's see the knight b8. Bit passive move, but okay, he would like to keep the material and save his knight a little bit. e5. We also don't hurry to take it back because he's pinned, and instead we try to open up the position as much as possible. So for example, bishop takes f3, queen takes f3, and d5. Why? Because he would like to close the position as much as possible. But look also, he has a piece up, but how about these pieces? This all. So we can play rook c3, preparing for rook dc1, and go to c8, and the position is completely winning. Yeah, we just break him with this maneuver. Okay, let's go back. So that's why rook a7, it was really nice. Bishop e3 and knight a4, beautiful play. Let's see how about bishop d7, bishop f4, and e5. Bishop e3, knight f6, and h3. This is, as I mentioned before, if we don't have any special breaking possibility, then we can play this kind of useful moves. First of all, open up the back rank, prevent the bishop, g4. This is just a good idea. Castle, knight d5, knight takes d5, bishop takes d5, and rook c8. Yeah, we just jumped there, and okay, he went out of the pin, but still I keep my d5 square, which gives the compensation for the pawn down. Rook a c1, knight b4. Yeah, he wants to attack our bishop because what else? This bishop can't move. Play with the queen is nothing. b6 is controlled. On c7 he would be on c-file. On a5 he's a little bit out of place, so not clear why he goes here. So knight b4. First of all, he attacks our bishop, and the simplifying is also a good idea for him, because finally he could castle. Bishop b3, bishop e6. Bishop takes e6, f takes e6, so we had to exchange this. a3, knight c6, and queen d2. Yes, we chase away the knight first, but then we improve the queen a little bit. It's a very important motif. The simplifying with rook takes c1 wouldn't be work for him, because rook takes back, and suddenly the knight is trapped. Can't go back. Knight a2, then rook a1, and here is completely trapped. We will take it in the next move. So that's why with this a3 we avoided the exchange of the rooks. So knight c6, queen d2. So we just come here. h6. Yeah, because sometimes we can go around this way also. So this is which he wanted to avoid with that. And after rook c3, we can also say that we have kind of compensation, because we can double on the c file. And yeah, we have some pressure on the c file. Maybe we can triple also later if it is requiring. So this is just completely good here. Okay, very nice. Let's go back a little bit. Let's go to the main line with b5. So we discussed the knight f6 is transposing, bishop e7 was it, but let's see if he immediately attacks us with the b5. Bishop b3, knight ge7, and rook d1. And knight g6. Okay, also knight f6 is in the rook d1 and e5. So that's why also this knight g7 development he does. Rook d1 and knight g6. How about bishop b7? Because these moves are always repeating. We just have to find always the correct answer after that. For example, now knight g5 exclamation mark. Usually we play for bishop f4, but then knight g6 will be a tempo and it's not so clear. So knight g5 is good, and now we can see that the bishop has a good pressure on this diagonal, so maybe we will sacrifice something there. Queen d7 he has to protect. Let's see how about if he would continue the plan with knight g6, but first of all, how about h6 to see that what is the real threat here. Maybe now the sacrifice will be a bit early, so queen h5 should be the first move and create some attack on the f7, and if he blocks with knight e6, then knight takes e6 is, we can see it's clearly winning because the knight will be hanging. And in case of g6, the queen can just go back to h3, and another piece as the queen also continue the attack on the e6 pawn. And now he's already in trouble, because for example if bishop g7, then we are already ready for the sacrificing with knight takes f7, king takes, queen takes e6, the king goes to e8, and okay, we have queen f7 check and take the bishop, but even rook d6 is more stronger and checkmate on f7. So h6 was not working. That's why let's see knight g6. But now I can also continue the pressure. I play h4 exclamation mark. This motif we also saw already. Okay, this is hanging, but the tempo and the attack is important than the material now. For example, knight takes h4 could have been met by queen g4. Now the knight is hanging, the knight has to leave, and then knight takes f7 and we crush him completely, because if king takes, then queen e7 is arriving for checkmate. And if the queen moves somewhere, then I can just take the rook. And materially white is winning also already. So let's see how about knight ge5, then f4, we go forward, and knight c4. Yes, the black knight doesn't really find his ideal square, because probably he doesn't have in the current position. a4. Yeah, we could win a pawn now with bishop c4, but we don't hurry with that. Instead, we a little bit weaken more his light squares with this a4. Queen b6 check, king h2, just go here, and bishop e7. A takes b5, a takes b5, rook takes a8, bishop takes 8, and let's see what was the point of this all a4 idea. We would like to undermine his c4 knight, which we can do with knight takes b5. And I get back the pawn, but I didn't have to give up the bishop pair with bishop takes c4. So knight takes b5, queen takes b5, and after bishop takes c4, white is clearly better here, because he didn't castle yet. Materially we are not worse, and we are just much more active, and that is a very important factor. Queen, for example, goes to b4, then we play kind of b3, castle, and yeah, queen g4, and our eyes are always on his king. So the material is already simplified a little bit, but still we have enough for the attack. Maybe bishop b2 can also come to connect this attack. Sometimes knight takes e6 will be also dangerous. So yeah, black is a bit worse. Okay, alright, so let's go back here. How about, for example, queen d7? This happened in the game also, instead of the knight g6. And now we also have to grab the initiative, very important. Queen h5. Attack the f7, and what does he do here? Knight g6. If pawn g6 instead, then we goes back to f3, and suddenly he is very weak on f7. The point is that why we provoke the g6, because if he would play queen f3 immediately, also not bad, but he has a knight g6 option, and he protected the f7, and he will come with knight ge5. So that's why this is very precise. Queen h5, g6, and only then come back to f3, and he has big problems on f7. So let's see how about knight g6, because he didn't want to weaken his position, and generally the knight is going towards the g6 if he went to e7 already. f4, we start with some activity here, knight a5, and f5. We also just go forward, knight takes b3, instead of a takes b3, first intermediate move f takes e6, f takes e6 and a takes b3 just now. So it's again a very smart continuation. Long castle. How about, for example, bishop e7 as a normal developing move? Knight takes h7. We put our knight in the pin, but this is no problem because the g6 is hanging then. So I mean the knight is hanging here in the pin, so he is even in a bigger trouble. Maybe kind of king f7, knight g5 check, bishop takes g5, queen takes g5, b4, knight a4. Still materially equal, the situation. It's a good question why we don't give a check here, because his king is going to g8, we take his knight, he also take our knight, so there is no any special way here. So that's why knight a4 first. Now we are threatening with knight b6, knight c5 also. Bishop takes e4, knight b6. And queen a7, so this was his point, just go there and pin the knight. But okay, bishop e3 and rook a d8, because after bishop e3, the rook is also hanging and the d6 pawn also hanging already, so this is a bit worse for him now, and it's also harder to do anything. So let's see rook a d8, but now rook f1 check, but that's why he did like this, because after king e8 the knight is protected by the e4 bishop. So this was his general idea in the current position. We come with knight c4, queen e7, but now we can take on a6, so the a6 pawn is simply hanging, and the white is completely good in the current position, because win back the pawn, and even the d6 is also weaker. So it's not so easy for him. Okay, the two pawns on b2 and b3, the double pawns, that is not really good, but white has another important pressure also here. b4 can be also weak, and the endgame is also no problem. So this is objectively a winning position. So let's see how about long castle instead of that. Now of course we can't take on h7 because it's not a pin, so the knight can jump somewhere and we just pin ourselves with this move. So bishop e3, continue the development, king b8, bishop f2, just go back here, knight e5, and after queen h3, white's position is better. So this was the bishop b7, which was a bit slow because of this knight g5 quick attack. So still knight g6 is the best option. However, here we will also immediately attack his king with his center with e5. Knight c e5. Why we sacrifice another pawn? Usually for the activity and for the attack, and now it's also like this, f4. Knight usually goes forward, because if he goes back it's even worse. We attack and he's hanging there. Knight c4, a4, b4, bishop takes c4, b takes c3, and f5. So still put 2 pawns down, but look again his back rank. All pieces are there. And he also can't continue the development because I'm threatening to take him, so I force him to play e5. And rook a3 is still a very smart continuation to activate the rook on the 3rd rank, and I think we have a little bit more than compensation.